How is everybody?
Fantastic.
Woo! My name's John Bush from Austin, Texas. Traveled all the way across the country to be here. I want to start by giving a big thanks to the Feel Good Foundation. It's why we're all here today, to raise money for a very noble cause. So today I wanted to speak about the cost of being true to yourself and the costs that are associated with being an activist, with being a radical, with being a libertarian, with dedicating your lives to pushing back on the establishment, to trying to create a more free, prosperous, and just society. Back in 2002, I came across a documentary by one Alex Jones. It was called 9/11 Road to Tyranny. I saw it on cable access down there in Austin, Texas, where Jones is from, and it was a very major eye-opener for me. I've always been quite the rebel, quite anti-authoritarian, but after witnessing that documentary and after coming to grips with what really happened that day, it monumentally changed my life. And ever since then, I've been involved in a struggle, not only against the establishment and the state, but also against my fellow Americans, also against my own movement as of recently, as of late. And it's rather unfortunate. So I'm trying to preach a message here that no matter what, no matter how hard the situation may be, no matter how hard the struggle may get, it's absolutely imperative that each one of us stay true to ourselves, that each one of us stay true to the truth, and that we don't waver on our principles, nor do we not allow the fear that exists within this modern society to prevent us from being true to ourselves and from speaking the truth. Because if we're able to do that, if we allow ourselves to do that, then it's my opinion that we've lost the battle, we've lost the war. There's a lot of terrible things happening in our country. 9/11 was one of them. And ever since I found out that the official story was a bunch of hogwash, I've done all I can to educate people to wake people up to that fact. And unfortunately, like I said, I've been met with a lot of adversity from the mainstream media using the term truther. Now, truther's a bad word, just like birther or tenther now, people advocating for the 10th Amendment. And there's a reason for that. It's because 9/11 has been a catalyst for not only the multiple foreign wars of aggression, but also using the war on terror apparatus, reversing it, turning it inwards, and now we see it coming after we the people. We see it coming after anybody that represents a threat to the status quo, regardless if they're of the left or of the right. So again, the message here today is, to hell with what the establishment says, to hell with the labels that they try to put on us, to hell with their efforts to kookify anybody that would question the official story about what happened on 9/11. It's absolutely imperative that we stay true to ourselves, because if we don't, then we're just going to allow the injustice that occurred that day to never be fully resolved. We will never see justice. We won't see justice for the 9/11 first responders, for everybody that lost their lives that day, for everybody that continues to die in the multiple foreign wars of aggression, and for the people that continue to be negatively harmed by the police state anti-terror apparatus that we see building around us. So, So after I woke up about 9/11, it was pretty much inevitable that I reached the point where I have come today. I found out about 9/11, started researching the Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, dug into the whole conspiracy to create a global government based on the philosophy of collectivism. Ron Paul turned me on to libertarianism. Up until that point, I felt that I was a Democrat just because I was in opposition to George Bush and his wars. I was caught in the reactionary left-right paradigm, and I want to thank Ron Paul for breaking me out of that. However, I thought I was a Republican for a couple months after going to the Republican convention, and then going to the convention and seeing, after all, wait a second, I'm no Republican. From there, I was turned on to the philosophy of libertarianism. And now, to this day, I've taken the knowledge that I learned in educating myself, and we've applied it through an organization that I helped to found. It's called Texans for Accountable Government. It's a political action committee down in Austin, Texas. We've pushed back on a lot of the negative results of 9/11. So I continue to educate people about what happened that day, because I think there's no better path to libertarianism than somebody to realize that government is capable of doing what they did on that day in 2001. So since then, what we've done is, with this organization, we haven't focused on spreading the truth about what happened on 9/11. Rather, we've focused on pushing back on what has caused as a result of 9/11, what has happened as a result. And one of those things is the fusion center system. Gigi mentioned Operation Defuse. It's an organization, not really an organization actually, it's more of a movement, an effort that Catherine Bleish and myself founded to educate the American public on what fusion centers are. And also, more importantly, in my opinion, to reach out to the law enforcement apparatus to demonstrate to them that we are not the threat that they are made to believe we are. So a fusion center, if you haven't heard of that, it's a law enforcement apparatus which seeks to merge the information gathering and intelligence sharing practices of local, state, and federal law enforcement. And what seems to be happening now is through the Department of Homeland Security, through organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League, they are effectively using this Department of Homeland Security apparatus that was set up in order to combat terrorism from abroad to marginalize every single person that is in this room right now, because they deem us a threat to the establishment. We're not a violent threat, but you can bet your ass we are indeed a threat to the establishment. So what we see happening now is the very same thing, I hate to say it, that we saw happen to the Jews in Nazi Germany. Before they could carry forward with their Holocaust and their eugenics program to eliminate an entire race of people, which they were trying to do, they had to put it in the eyes of the German people that Jews are not human, that they're subhuman, that they should not have any sympathy if harm were to fall upon the Jewish people. And now we see that happening to our movement, to the truth movement, to the freedom movement. Since the beginning, since 9/11, again, they've cookified the term truther. We saw Glenn Beck, the great libertarian hero, who said, these guys are trying to do a money bomb on Guy Fawkes Day. Who knows if one of them is going to be crazy and they're actually going to blow something up. You saw after people were shouting about World Trade Center 7 on the Bill Maher show, they said, these 9/11 truthers should be tased and taken to some camp in a foreign country. It continues to this day. There was a truther that was down at Ground Zero during 9/11. Just recently they had coverage saying these people should, it was Bill O'Reilly, these people should be barred from going to Ground Zero. So obviously the truthers have been attacked since the beginning, but now we see, now that Barack Obama has taken office, there's been a resurgence of this right-wing anti-authoritarian mentality, the same resurgence that we saw take place back in '92 whenever Clinton took office. And now what they're trying to do is put it in the eyes of law enforcement through the Fusion Center system. The Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League use the Fusion Center apparatus in order to train local law enforcement, again, to believe that each and every one of the people in this room is a violent threat to them. Additionally, we see the Southern Poverty Law Center, which labeled Catherine Bleish here, sweet little innocent, peace-loving, hippie-like Catherine Bleish, as a potential violent radical threat. They used her name. They even went so far, Heidi Barrick, the director of research for the Southern Poverty Law Center, this really pissed me off very bad. She implied that Catherine Bleish and her organization are domestic terrorists. Almost word for word.
That's how you know you're a real patriot with SPLC grenades.
That's right.
SPLC love.
So I think that's very dangerous. They're setting a very dangerous precedent. And it threatens each and every one of us, because I know I've dedicated my life to this cause. I'm willing to give my life to this cause, and the establishment is shaking in their boots because of that. They're shaking in their boots because we're getting organized, because we're electing people, because we're pushing back, because we're beginning to operate outside of their monopoly on coercion, and they're scared, pardon my French, they're scared shitless. So they are reacting in a very negative manner, and they are creating a system that could potentially cause some very major harm to each and every one of us. So again, the message I'd like to impart on you is not to be fearful from this, to counter what the efforts that they're doing. And some of the ways that we can counter that is to walk with love. I am not a fan of revolution, rather I support peaceful evolution. For I fear if we continue to get caught in this cycle of revolutions, we won't ever move forward. We'll simply keep revolving. And what happens is we put our faith in the system, the very system that's caused the injustice that we're all fighting, and that is the state and its monopoly on coercion over a certain geographic area. So one of the things that I'd like to do to counter this state action and this state marginalization campaign that we see is I would like to encourage each and every one of you to begin to participate outside of the system. There's value in participating within the system and pushing back on it, especially when you push back on those institutions and those mechanisms which prevent us from living freely. Sobriety checkpoints, for example, fusion centers, for example, mass vaccination campaigns. So what I encourage everybody in this room to do is to focus less on the state. To hell with the state, especially the federal government. I don't give a damn what the federal government has to say. They can pass their SB 510 to ban organic gardening. It's not going to keep me from setting one up in my backyard. They can come and decrop it or pull it out of the ground if they want. It's not going to stop me from doing it. So I think until we break the cycle of revolution, until we all realize that there's an inherent flaw in the state system in that it operates through a monopoly on coercion, we're simply going to continue to perpetuate our problems. So how do we do that? How do we operate outside of the system? Well, one of the things that you can do is to begin to build community to solve your common problems. To hell with the state to solve all problems. They obviously aren't capable of doing that. So for example, down in Austin, Texas, our police chief wanted to institute a federal program to train police officers to do blood withdrawals in the event that they suspect you are intoxicated. They'll pull you over, they'll take you into the headquarters or to the bat testing mobile, and they'll forcibly stick a needle in your arm and take your blood. So obviously there's a political thing. We pushed back on that. We prevented them from doing that in Austin. But more importantly, we also encouraged an organization called Square Patrol. And what Square Patrol does is they get out on the street, you call them up, they show up to your vehicle with the motorized scooter, they fold it down, they put it in your trunk, and they drive your butt home, your drunk butt. You get to take your car home too. So it's absolutely necessary, and I think it's something that's lacking within our movement. We're so reactionary. The state, we got to push back on the state. They're so evil, they're so tyrannical. The state. Let's go to the halls of Congress, let's send letters, let's send emails, let's run campaigns. But we're completely neglecting to stand up as free people and get down, put our boots on the ground, and take care of ourselves. And one of the things that inspired me to reach that position is exactly what the Feel Good Foundation has done. It's obvious that the government has turned their back on the heroes of 9/11. They're not providing them with the proper health care. They're not fulfilling the contracts of their employment. So some New Yorkers got together, John Field, and they created their own foundation to provide the help necessary in order for these people to not be left with a massive debt, in order for them to get the health care that they need. So I think that's perfectly indicative of exactly what I'm trying to push for. We the people need to come together, stop complaining about what the state's doing, and start taking care of ourselves and start taking care of each other. Because until we do that, we're simply going to continue this perpetual cycle of revolutions where we never advance the ball forward. Maybe we take baby steps forward, but I'm tired of moving forward slowly but surely. I'm ready for the people to basically give up on the state. And I think the state's going to give up on itself, actually, because it's no longer sustainable and the economy's no longer sustainable. So again, on that note, another thing you could do if you don't support the war, stop paying for it. I know it's pretty difficult and it puts yourself in a lot of risk, but if we all do it together, I'm on the verge of giving a pledge that if the United States of America invades Iran, I'm going to stop paying my income tax.
That's right!
Yeah! And I know that's saying a lot, and it might seem drastic, it might seem extreme, but what the establishment is doing is extreme. So we need to counter their extremism with our extremism, and it needs to maintain that peaceful perspective. But again, ladies and gentlemen, unless we start to operate outside of the institution, the system, by creating our own communities, creating our own parallel governments, parallel institutions, we're only going to continue the perpetual cycle of violence. That's because the state system, the essence of the state, is violence, is coercion. So again, I highly encourage everybody, in order to counter this push to marginalize us, it's absolutely imperative that we simply choose freedom. And once we make that choice, we've already won the war. So, thank you.